Welcome, Yvette. I'm happy that you joined us today. You are CPN's Ambassador of the Month for December, which means you're crushing it serving the CPN community. So I just wanted to do a spotlight, just getting to know you better outside of CMMC clients work, to know
Cool.
more about your journey.
Cool.
Welcome.
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. I feel like I've gone 360. I remember when I was just exploring the CMMC space and I was looking at who the thought leaders were. And it was actually your podcast. Of course, it is like everyone under the sun who's trying to have a point of view in the space. But I really loved your videos, found them engaging and in a way to simplify this dynamic and complex space. So I'm really glad that we connected, and it's been fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's my whole goal, trying to simplify CMMC, translate it, because it's so much tech jargon and
Yes.
that's not helpful.
Yes. No,
So
not at
I,
all.
I want to translate. Now, also, congratulations, you're newly minted
Thank you.
CMMC certified professional. So,
Oh,
how was that experience?
it was the exam, my whole journey from really committing to get into the ecosystem to certification was about 4 months. It wasn't so much the subject matter that was unfamiliar. It was more getting smart about the regulations and the strategic intent. But, I really, really studied. I had this app called Pocket Prep where you
Mhm.
just do speed rounds of quiz. So I'd be online at the supermarket answering CMCC related questions. If you weren't CMCC for the last 2 weeks launching to the exam, I didn't want to hear it. So, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was, although you are, really as a CCP looking at level one, being able to do that independently and then support level two, they had a great deal of level two focus in the questions. So I was really glad
Yeah.
that I prepped for that. It was a fun journey and I've met some amazing people and on to CCA.
Oh, awesome. So, for those who are viewing and if they see all of the awards and plaques on the wall and the PhD behind your name, they may be surprised that you actually have to study for the
Oh,
CCP
yeah.
exam.
Yeah. The one thing about a PhD is you learn what you don't know and you get really good at
Yeah.
learning what you don't know.
It's a valuable skill.
We used to joke and say a PhD was for pretty high and deep, like you just know. But no, you really do have to know, what attracted me to CMCC was the intent and the purpose and protecting the mission of protecting and contributing to the protection of our national security. And also just believing that, compliance is entry level for businesses that want to be innovative, competitive. And so, it's much more about engaging the business in a whole way of thinking about doing business than it is a checklist. When I really committed to okay, what am although I've been within the tech sector and been around a lot of tech enablement solutions, I wanted to go back and learn cybersecurity because I'd been at the strategy level, but I've never had hands on keys. So I enrolled in Columbia's cybersecurity boot camp, which is like this 24-week intensive.
Oh,
You're,
wow.
you're doing offensive security, defensive, attacking, you're doing threat analysis, you're writing scripts. So I've been doing bash scripting and, attacking and hardening of different
Oh,
systems. And
wow.
and so, I mean, I love capture the flag. So I was never a tech person, but in the tech related industries. But I felt like, how could I assess or test the security of something where I don't really understand what it is? So
Mhm.
although as an assessor, I'll never be hands on keys, I think I have a lot more appreciation for the role of controls, what they are meant to do, what they do, where process, procedures, or people related issues come into play. So it's been also learning, upgrading what I knew about the different tools. Um,
Right.
it's been a lot of fun. I'll be done in March with that. But if I didn't have that grounding, I think the exam would have been just more theoretical and I wouldn't have been able to apply.
Okay. Wow. Yes, that's really insightful. So take me back to, let's go back to your journey. So you graduate from high school. What were your career aspirations
Yes.
at that point?
So, whenever I go back and I talk to high school students and they ask me, well, how did you get from point A to point B? I always retrofit and pretend that that was like a path that I had all along.
Right.
But after high school, I know that I was interested in going to a university someplace warm. And what I was really good at that time was writing. And so I got a scholarship to go and attended the University of Tampa. And I, started as an English major and then really didn't like the study of English. I loved writing and creative writing.
Mhm.
And I was on my way to a class one day, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do this, but it means I lose my scholarship. And so I passed by an ROTC opportunity to have my courses paid for if I were to join the military part of the school. And
Mm.
so, as true Private Benjamin, I decided that I would do that just because it'd be a great workout and I'd meet cool people. And, also during that time, I came out. And at that time, being gay and serving in the military wasn't congruent. You couldn't do both, but I still wanted to find a way to serve. And so I was really interested in this intersection of law, criminal procedural law, ways to serve the nation's interests. And then, I focused in and changed my undergraduate to psychology, did forensic psychology, behavioral psychology.
Ooh.
Really my own journey fostered me to understand how people related to each other, how institutions related to people, how policy and impact shaped our culture. And so fast forward, so after I get my bachelor's, I start working in doing psychosocial diagnostics for the New York State
Mm.
criminal justice system. So if you were arrested, you were looking at jail time, I was the person that would assess you to say, are you somebody who's drug addicted and that's leading to criminality, or are you just a criminal that's using substance? And so I would look at whether people would go into alternative incarceration versus jail time. And at that time, this disease called HIV came into being, and all of a sudden these things that I considered soft had real, looking at behaviors of people, life-saving behaviors. How were these institutions that people didn't trust, whether they be undocumented or the substance abusing, but how are we going to come up with interventions that are going to change intimate behavior in a way that services the greater good? So because there were no experts, I had an opportunity to work with governors, the CDC, the American Psychological Association, and watched, often on the floor, eating bad Chinese food with flip charts, outlining how we were going to intervene in a way where we were going to be saving lives. And so that was a great experience to do something mission driven, to work with government institutions. Fast forward, then in between my doctorate, my bachelor's, I continued my interest in criminal procedural law by going to John Jay Criminal College here in New York and focused again on forensics, digital forensics,
Okay.
behavioral, digital profiling. And as I went to begin my doctorate, it was around 1999. And if you remember, everybody was really concerned about when all the computers go
And
from
Y2K.
99, right, we're going to lose everything we know. So
Right.
there was this birth of solutions and services called knowledge and content management. How are we going to get people to contribute what they know in a way that we can capture and redistribute it for use later on? So knowledge management, I didn't know was a thing. I got a call from IBM after I did my doctorate. They said, you're at that time, I was rated number 9, I think, on the top 10 of dissertation topics. And it really was a great blend
Wow.
of information management, behavioral science, and business solutions. And so IBM called. I started out as a consultant with them, and consultants go to market by industry. I happen to be aligned with the defense sector, the IT
Oh,
sector, and the higher education sector. Did that for 10 years. And over that time, because I had this human technical integration thread, I was able um, to be involved in technology. But the premise being, it's about people, organizational adoption, and enablement. And so over the years, I've always been focused on this intersection of people, technology, innovation, usually in regulated sectors, and helping
okay.
companies manage risks of so many types. So I've just had a career in a variety of consulting firms, serving those industries and keeping my finger on the pulse of the evolution of these different issues as they overlay,
Mm,
these regulatory landscapes. So it's been nothing like a straight line, but
never
in my
is.
head, it makes sense.
No, makes a lot of sense, and it's clear that you've always been mission driven. And I've noticed that a lot about people in the CMMC space, where a lot of them are really mission driven and proud Americans and want to protect our country. And
Yeah.
yeah, that is great to work with like-minded people. Now, I recently saw your picture in the Oval Office. So
Yeah.
you know some people in high places. Tell us about that experience.
So one of my roles that was amazing was serving as a vice president for Lockheed Martin. And my role there was not only working to ensure that our human capital strategy supported our business strategy. So, for example, if in the defense sector, what we sell to other countries is highly regulated.
Right.
And what they buy is highly orchestrated. So if Lockheed Martin knew that it was going to sell 4 5 jets or C-130 bombers to Israel, then we needed to know where we were going to get those skills and ensure those
Mhm.
people had the right capabilities at the right time to execute that. And the defense sector is very, very keen on specificity. And
Oh yeah.
I was in that role during the end of the Obama administration, the beginning of the Trump administration. And as you may recall, our alliances, the dynamics with our alliances shifted. And so that meant all the math we had done proactively to estimate what countries were going to buy, which capabilities, that all shifted with that, but it was the first time where my calculation, people usually think of HR or people support as soft, but literally, if I wasn't able to understand not only what we were going to sell and what skills that was going to require for new and existing talent, but to be able to work with our corporate strategy folks to say, okay, what type of war footing will we be on? If it's a soft target, that's one type of technology and skills needed. If we're on a missile kind of related environment, that's
Hmm.
another war footing. So it was the opportunity to do the work that I loved in instances where it was truly life-saving, life-sustaining. So that was one thing. As the leading global defense firm, we advise both parties in the event of an election, the Republican and Democratic nominee, we update on behalf of the sector. But the other thing is we also, the commitment to hiring veterans. Well, 50% of Lockheed's workforce are veterans. So I was really passionate, engaged with the White House across administrations on coming up with strategies to help veterans transition into
Oh
the
yeah.
private sector, being able to translate those experiences, being able to help with veteran spouses in looking at remote entrepreneurial opportunities so that they didn't have to deal
Wow.
with the challenge of that. I've been to the White House and have worked with different committees like the Department of Homeland Security and the National Foreign Council to look at going beyond saying, we thank you for your service, but how are we going to, from an economic perspective? And it was great because not only working with veterans on how to become part of big companies, but how do you develop a book of business as an entrepreneur? How do you plug and play into the ecosystem. And so, yes, I've been to the White House a couple of times, and it's really awe-inspiring. It's a very
I
special
can
place.
imagine. Wow, that's incredible. A lot to unpack there. Let's see where to start. So a few things that stood out to me. You're basically working across administrations, Obama administration and Trump administration.
Yeah.
What insights and skills did you gain as far as taking that bipartisan approach, advising multiple administrations? I think that's such an invaluable insight.
Yes, it is. Each administration brings its hopes and its aspirations, and the gap between what they aspire to do and what they do inevitably,
Yeah.
gets shaken out. There's things that are different across administration where they prioritize funding and investments. And then there's areas where there's a lot of synergy and understanding about priorities in areas like our national defense, security, and our posture around cybersecurity. The first time I heard about CMCC, years ago, it was when I was engaged in working with the primes and
Okay.
the prime contractors like the Northrops and the Lockheed Martins. I really got invaluable experience about watching how they consult on the environment and then how they're also shaping the environment. So they're not in a reactive mode. They're actively shaping environments that serve our national interests. And across administrations, the things that don't make the television or the news cycles are the unwavering hand on the wheel at no matter how tumultuous our election cycles on, where people would think if we didn't have that steady hand and handoff and alignment, that would be a very vulnerable time for our country.
Yeah.
But I've really gained respect for our government and our leaders' approach to navigating a messy process with a level of precision and forward looking that most people wouldn't even imagine.
So you're saying we can rest assured there are fail safes
Yes.
in our government.
Yes. I feel comfortable sleeping at night. Yes.
Okay. All right. Me too. In relation to veterans and transitioning, that's a topic near and dear to my heart as a veteran. I always say I got started in cybersecurity in the military right out of high school, 2002.
Yeah.
Long before cybersecurity was sexy. But now everyone knows what cybersecurity is. No one knew what it was then.
Right.
But once I transitioned out the military, I didn't even connect the dots and really understanding that, oh, I've been doing cybersecurity. Now I can do it for a corporation.
Yeah.
And it took me a while. But once I got military, I went straight to defense contracting. Then once I got a defense contracting, I also worked for Lockheed Martin, the last contract.
Wow.
After about 8 years of just being in the whole defense industry world, yeah, transitioning was tough.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of veterans struggle with that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's not as though it's about a lack of technical skill. Often it's the arrogance of, let's say, fill in talent acquisition or recruiter here, where
Right.
they're looking at their checklist and it's like, yeah, this veteran has set up small cities and defended the nation, but he doesn't have Excel on his resume. Can he learn
Right,
Excel?
right.
Or, I've seen some vets who've transitioned and, the notion of how when you're in the military, your commitment to team, what leadership
yeah.
looks like is totally different than the bureaucratic political kind
The
of
culture
pointy
shock.
elbow. Yeah. But for companies that go beyond just, we're going to dedicate 5% of our workforce, that really go to, wow, you mean after action review is something we should be applying? And you're absolutely right. It's an area where we still have a lot of work to do.
Definitely. Now, as it pertains to CMMC,
Mhm.
based on your experience in government and everything you've done up to this point,
Yeah.
what are some blind spots that you see as far as the way that the DoD is rolling out
Blind
the
spots. Well,
CMMC?
one is that people who are in a place, whether that be an OSA or a company that's looking to get their head around how they independently need to calculate whether and how CMCC is applicable to them, is whenever there's change and ambiguity, there's opportunities for people to ensure they're not taken advantage of. Although the demand for CMCC related services dwarfs the amount of resources that are there to help companies get ready and successfully pass certification. I mean, there's an ethical backbone to CMCC of ensuring that this doesn't become an opportunity for people to be taken advantage of, for companies to be given
Right for it.
assurances or
Yeah.
set prices. And I've already seen in the broader market where are companies that are making promises or exacerbating fears. My hope is that those tendencies will be mitigated. And just like we've seen examples of what happens when you become susceptible to the False Claims Act, I hope that there's some backbone that demonstrates, okay, if companies are trusting you in this space, and you are serving the interest and principles of CMCC, that other than just the honor system, there's some accountability for those of us that are operating more true to form and less in this kind of parasitic. So that I see is something that will be interesting to see as we go forward. And as there's more data on what we're doing, perhaps best practices will be shared among practitioners and assessors.
Right.
But right now is a great opportunity for innovation, but it also makes some folks vulnerable for exploitation.
To your point, yeah, whenever there's change, it's going to be
Right.
fear and people exploiting that fear.
Right.
Really good insights. Going back to when you joined the CMMC Professionals Network,
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first message you sent me in relation to that. You pretty much said, "Hey, how can I serve? These are my superpowers. I'm here to serve." So that's something that really stood out to me, and that's something I encourage people first to do: identify what are your superpowers,
Right.
because I find that very helpful, especially as an employer, where I want to put people in positions where they're going to thrive, they're going to enjoy what they're doing, versus me trying to figure it out. I want them to be able to figure it out. So that was so just refreshing to hear from someone. Talk to us more about how can one identify the superpower?
One of the things about working at IBM that I really enjoyed was the opportunity to travel around the world and to work with different countries and cultures in the context of change. And in Japan, there is a framework that folks may find helpful. I did, called EKJ. And EKJ is a concept that in Japanese culture that encourages people to discover what they're passionate about and what brings them joy. If you imagine concentric circles and you think about answering 4 questions, one, passion. What do you love and what brings you joy? And so that's one. Another circle is vocation. What are you good at? And what do you excel in? So, do you have a sense of what you're good at? Your mission. What does the world need and how can you contribute to it? And then the fourth would be profession. What can you be paid for and what skills are available in the economy? And so, throughout my whole life, I'm always clear. I might not know what an opportunity looks like. So if somebody said, well, what do you want to do next? Instead of leading with, I want to be a CMCC assessor, which hardly nobody does. If
Right.
I look at what am I passionate about? What am I good at and excel in? What does the world need? How can I contribute? And then what can I be paid for? If you take those 4 circles and you put them all together, at the center is what you should do, could do, you'd be good at. And so at this point in time, CMCC landed squarely in the middle. And because I am a lifelong learner, love learning, still in school, and there's an art and science to it, learning and has always been part of how I move forward. So the opportunity to mentor, to learn, to teach, to consult, which is really just teaching your clients, and building their capabilities.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I find that served me well.
Okay. Fantastic. That's really helpful. I love just kind of lay it out there and kind of that framework that anyone can help them identify their superpower. Well, Yvette, really appreciate your time today and certainly appreciate all you're doing to serve the CPN community and also the contributions you're making to the CMMC ecosystem. And before I let you go, I would love to get your insights on what are some things that you would like to see the CPN organization do to better serve the CMMC ecosystem?
Going back to the learning piece and exploring and discovering and solving together, I think that instead of folks trying to figure things out on their own, there's so many low, no cost ways where you can accelerate alignment, decision making. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out process, but bringing stakeholders together to have a data driven approach to identifying risks, flagging opportunities, and then partnering internally and externally to solve for X can be fun. Yes, compliance can be fun.
Right.
And
best kept secret.
yes, can be fun. And it's an opportunity of businesses of all sizes to think about whether it be the supply chain, opportunities to build capabilities they don't have. The opportunities are just vast for new conversations, proactive ways of partnering, and defining what good looks like together. So I'm excited about all the opportunities to lean in and how diverse those opportunities are.
Very exciting. Well, I'm glad you're along for the ride, Yvette. I know you can make a substantial contribution, continue to make substantial contributions.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership, all you do, and for being a backbone to new and existing practitioners alike.
You all inspired me and has reinvigorated my zest for entrepreneurship and serving, most importantly.
Yeah.